Have you ever seen a recently renovated home and kind of just like looked at it and felt like there was something wrong, but you can't really articulate why? Today, let's go on a walk and talk about why that home renovation looks wrong and why. I think one of the most notable and probably the most annoying mistakes that I personally see is people trying to turn the house into something that it's not. I'm talking about pretty much trying to change the original bones. It's just not going to happen, unfortunately. Oh, the sun, it's better. So as an example, if you have a mid-century home, you're trying to turn into a traditional Victorian, there's always going to be an element of that mid-century aspect that you just can't get rid of just by cosmetics alone. There's always going to be the high pointed ceilings or the slightly less ornate look of it. There's always going to be something about it that just doesn't quite mesh well with the Victorian era unless you go ahead and transition them in together nicely. But the problem I find is people will just think about the only particular style that they like and then just focus on that, not respecting the fact that there's other things in the home they have to consider. The only occasion where you can go ahead and just completely forget about the past and what is on the slate currently is to completely remove it. So you will have to go ahead and demolish the entire house so then you can get the home that you want. And look, that's not always going to be the case for a lot of us, so having to try and work with the home rather than against it is going to help significantly at making it feel as if that home renovation was well done and intentionally done as well. I think the people that are most likely to create this sin of design is usually house flippers. Their only goal is to make it look a little bit more modernized and updated, that they forget about craftsmanship or the fact that the home has its own voice. So they are probably the most prominent people to go ahead and create this mistake, but they're not the only ones. So if you do have a home that you don't love the space and you want to change it, that's okay. I'm not saying that you can't do that, but you just have to be intentional to make it feel as if it works together. Because if you go against it, it'll be very, very obvious. Before I continue, I really need to show you this house because I think it's a great example of stepping out of your comfort zone with color, but still making it look so nice. Look at this place here. It is so different to all the other places. Pink and almost like this deep berry red for a American home. Oh, look, there's a squirrel. Like, that is almost unheard of, and I just think it looks so good. It has a bit of a statement. It is a little different to the actual brickwork. It's a little bit more on the contrasting side, but the brickwork's still quite yellow, so it's still in that warm sort of color palette. But I think this is a really interesting take on trying to do something different. Another mistake that is extremely notable, and is probably the one that most people pick up on the quickest, is the color. Sometimes you choose a color that's a little bit too modern for a home, and if you haven't completely updated everything, the parts that you didn't update look as if they're dirty. So this one I commonly see in bathrooms, sometimes kitchens as well. Someone will repaint the walls, but they'll leave the cream sink. And once you repaint the walls into something that's a lot more modernized and cooler, it ends up looking really, really dirty and gross, and you feel like you have to change everything out all over again. This one can certainly be bothersome because you want to update the space, you want to make it feel nice and new, but you unintentionally then end up making it feel worse because beforehand it looked, a little outdated, bad, I suppose you could say, but once you go ahead and create that heavier contrast, all of a sudden you're like, oh boy, now everything needs to go. Whereas beforehand, if you kept it cohesive, you would have been like, oh, I can live with it, but it's not the end of the world. Look how many leaves there are here. Woohoo! Whee! Oh, this is gorgeous. Fall is amazing. I recently mentioned in a video that I didn't really like decorating for fall and even decorating for the seasons, but I will say that I am slowly changing my opinion on this. Obviously, I really like eating my fall desserts. I have really fallen in love with pumpkin pie because I made it recently, and you know, sometimes things change over time, sometimes opinions do change. I'd love to know if there is something that you thought was really trendy originally and maybe now you're reflecting back on it and you're just kind of going, that was a poor decision. Let me know in the comments below, because I think for myself at least, my design preferences have changed a lot over time, but there have been a few things that have stayed true to self. One of my biggest things is also craftsmanship. And craftsmanship is one of those few things that I feel like are disappearing from this world. Alright, let's be honest, this one is pretty creative. Some people are so good at their Halloween decor. So I think this house behind me is a fantastic example of not quite understanding undertones. So we've got this brick that's actually pretty cool toned, and then we've got this yellow that is very, very warm in comparison. And although the actual grout is a little bit on that warmer side, the yellow is still a little too warm for this house, so it's kind of clashing a little bit. Let me know if you can see that or not. But yeah, this is a close attempt of trying to get that warmer sort of tone to come through, and you could have achieved this with a bit more of a cooler sort of yellow tone. However, this one is a little too buttery for this house's liking. As I was just talking about with craftsmanship, I feel like there has been a real dive in terms of the quality of builds, and this can sometimes be a major hindrance to a new home renovation or even just a new home build in itself, which I have a huge vendetta against. We see these like homes from the 50s, the 70s that look immaculate still to this day, and then you have a home that was built in 2010 and it looks like it's decrepit and is going to fall apart any minute now. Like, what happened to our quality standards with workmanship? You would think that we would have better at this given point in time, but unfortunately that hasn't been the case. So what can we do about it? Well, I have actually changed my opinion on this. Originally, I thought that if you can hire someone out that is meant to be a skilled craftsman, you should do that. But the more that I've seen the skill levels and the quality just due to the speed of how things are done now, the more I'm like, if it's not going to injure you, I would highly suggest DIY. So I'm a little apprehensive towards someone doing electrical work as an example. But if you have the time and you're physically fit, you should do the painting in your home. Like, if there is like the requirement for scaffolding, I get it. Makes sense to get a painter in. But I actually saw a quote recently, and it was from I think it was like a builder or something. And it was something along the lines of, the sweet taste of a good deal doesn't last very long when you're met with the regret of a poor build. And I can't, that just makes me go, yes, that is exactly right. So although you may find a cheap chippy or sparky, whoever it may be, although it is nice to obviously get that cheap deal, and of course we are all struggling with money at the moment, it doesn't necessarily mean that's the best thing. And I would actually suggest that you should probably pay a little bit more to hopefully get that better person. I met this fantastic tiler. He actually did my mum's backsplash. He was a true artisan. He really, really took his time to ensure that everything was perfectly lined up. The man was like a geometrical genius, honestly. And it's that sort of behavior we want to see more. So if you can't afford to get someone in like that, I would suggest, if it's not going to be potentially hazardous to you, do it yourself, because you're going to care a lot more about how your space is going to look and make your home renovation look as good as possible than some people that don't have the drive to make every piece of work look amazing. A bit of a hot take, admittedly. Originally, I wasn't all that fond about people doing DIY stuff because I've seen some terrible DIYs, but the more that I'm seeing that there's a lack of integrity for craftsmanship, the more that I'm like, okay, everyone just do your own DIY stuff, because even if your DIY isn't to the same skill level as a true skilled craftsman, at least you put in all that effort and work to try and make it as beautiful as you could. So yeah, that's a bit of a ramble. All right, for my final mistake, let's head home so I can show you some of the problems. Oof, and talk about craftsmanship. That is a bummer. This is recently painted, by the way. I watched them paint this one. Look at him. Alright, welcome back. We are currently in a kitchen, and this is the final mistake that I see a lot of houses and home renovations make the mistake of, and that is it's not usable. So this kitchen is called an alleyway kitchen because it goes one way, and usually it can go out the end to a laundry, to a back door. Sometimes it just ends. So for me, I have a door. So alleyway kitchens are great for an apartment or someone that like lives alone, or maybe just a couple, because you don't really have that much space, so you want to use up as much space as possible. But there are some negatives to it. One of them being that if you have a much larger household, there is a flow issue. So for example, in this space, if there was like 3 people that wanted to use this area, it gets crowded very quickly. So let's say I wanted to use the laundry. Nothing's really a problem back here. But then if someone wants to use the fridge, I'm stuck. I can't get out of here until they're done. Very annoying. Or even how about the dishwasher? If the dishwasher is out like this, it is in my path. I know you can't see it, but I could trip over this because it is disrupting my little hallway here. So it's not necessarily the worst layout in the world for a couple or someone that lives alone, but for a much larger family, this doesn't make sense. And this is what we see sometimes in some home renovations. People don't think about how they use the space, so it's no longer functional. Obviously, a kitchen is a major space that if there's something wrong, you're going to know, but sometimes it's as simple as there's pathways throughout the house, and you walk into somebody else or you walk into a piece of furniture. It means that there's flow that's being disrupted, and so it just doesn't work right. And sometimes what we see with modern builds or people that update their home is that they won't consider how they'll use the space functionally, and so then you have problems like this. Now, it's a bummer if you have some of these in your home, because a lot of the time, if it is layout affected, it's a lot harder to get rid of. However, there is sometimes a little bit of movement that you can do with just furniture pieces, and that might alleviate some of the woes of having something that's been poorly designed. But even if you have a poorly designed home and you've gone through some of these mistakes that we've discussed in this video, it's not the end of the world. You can still love your home, you can still improve your home over time, and just make the best of a bad situation. So if you've made any of these mistakes, it is okay, it happens, but it is also not the end of the world, so do not hate your home if you have. Let me know in the comments below if there are other mistakes that you see people making when they're renovating their home, and I will see you guys in the next design adventure.